Another dimension of ethical literacy is ethical leadership. All of us, almost whatever our station, our particular role, either at work or at home, are leaders in some form or another. And by that, what I mean is that we have power or influence over other people in some way, shape, form. And part of ethical literacy is how we use that ability to influence or guide other people to live better lives. In fact, one of the things that I would suggest is that leadership is not just the opportunity to guide those who one has influence over to live better lives, but actually comes with the responsibility to do that. I'm going to simply focus on the work context for a moment. When we have a role that is a leadership role, where we have a team to work with and guide and support, then part of our responsibility is to help the people on that team to flourish, to be able to discharge their professional responsibilities as well as they can to achieve the end goals of the activity, of the system they're working in, as well as to flourish as human beings, to be able to live as well as they can. That's a responsibility of leadership. An important dimension of ethical leadership is intentional role modeling. As we talked about when we were looking at the values video, every time we act, we are showing the world what should matter. We're saying to the world, this is what matters to us. And when we are in power, we're saying to the world, this is actually what should matter in the way that we show up, in the way that we make decisions, all of these kinds of things. So part of ethical leadership is intentionally behaving in ways that we want other people to look at and say, yes, that's the way we ought to live our lives. So role modeling is really important. Role modeling takes the form both of those character traits that we talked about in the virtue story, the kinds of excellences of courage and patience and generosity and compassion, those kinds of things that we want to show in the world in a complementary kind of way, as well as role modeling in the way we make decisions, the intentional, deliberate, identification of values, prioritization of values, thinking through facts, and problem solving in an inclusive, collaborative environment as informed by the perspectives that we talked about in the pluralism context. All of this is the role modeling responsibility of leaders. When it comes to decision making, leaders have the responsibility to set the stage for how decisions in the area that they're working in, that the team is working in, will get to be made. It's very easy when you have power to try to exercise that power, make decisions, and simply guide things. And to be sure, there are times when leaders have to exercise judgment quickly and make decisions. But wherever possible, leaders need to think about, how do I work with the complex people around the table and create environments where people can show up, deeply listen to each other, make sense of the world together, and find common solutions to their common problems. So leaders need to understand the complexity of the relational dynamics in the work environment where they're working, and then create the spaces using the authority that they have to bring people together in thoughtful, intentional, deliberative action. When I'm a leader and I have the responsibility to support someone in their journey, and I have the insight about what ethical literacy is all about, then I have also the opportunity and the responsibility to support the people I am working with on their own ethical literacy journeys. So one of the things that becomes a responsibility of leadership is to name for people who we are working with what ethical literacy is all about. how it applies to the work that we're doing, how it applies in our lives, and to give them the learning opportunities to strengthen the dimensions of ethical literacy that we have talked about. Moral reasoning, character development, pluralism, understanding value traditions, understanding how a situation is ethically salient. These are all things that the leader can support the person they're working with to build their capacity around so that they can live, as we pointed to earlier, more free, authentic lives of integrity and to flourish as human beings. Ethical leadership in a given context also involves the responsibility to advance the goals of that context. In other words, it's extremely important for a leader who is working in a setting, like in healthcare, to have a really strong sense of what the end purpose of this activity is, so that we recognize that whether we're working in technology development, or whether we're working in housekeeping, or whether we're working in the intensive care unit, or whether we're working in home care, or whether we're working in finance, or whether we're working in an executive capacity, it doesn't matter. Whatever we're doing is trying to achieve the end of making the people we are looking after vulnerable people, improving their health and well-being, improving and supporting the well-being of their families, and looking after and advancing the health and well-being of the population we are serving overall. So we need to understand the broader scope of what this whole enterprise of healthcare is about, how our work fits into that, and making sure that we are moving in that positive direction to achieve the goals, the purpose that this activity is actually all about. Ethical leadership is also about pursuing justice. It is about when we have authority in our worlds, then we have the opportunity to move in humble, small ways perhaps, but to move our world, our community, towards an environment where there is greater justice, where there is less discrimination and bias, where we are allocating resources and treating each other in ways that respects the dignity of all of the people involved in situations. That comes with the responsibility of leadership, calibrated to the type of leadership and the scope of work we're doing. But that's certainly something, a hallmark, a characteristic of an ethical leader, that we're trying to look at, reflect on the common good, and moving society in our small way towards the common good.